Welcome, friends. It is week 7. That's our lecture 1, meaning it is Tuesday, May 16th. I was gone all week, so it's so good to be back with you guys. So good to hang out. Again, chat about tech and all the fun stuff. I'm excited because you guys are about to move on to your next step of your journey. Though I loathe the fact that we are no longer going to be a class, I'm excited that you guys are being able to move forward and go on to that next step to potentially get a job and eventually get a job, not potentially, eventually get a job in tech, which I think will be awesome. Just a couple of housekeeping things. I always like to remind this because this is usually, especially if you've already done the exam or if you're in the middle of the exam, it's easy to kind of forget this other stuff. But you still have a couple things due. So just want to make sure you do that. You have discussion questions, which are due Sunday. So still make sure you do those this week and next week. Please make sure you just knock those out. Go ahead and do those now. Now, this is a unique class as well, where you actually have a core assignment due this week. It's authors. Now, what does that mean? It means that if you have done, as a reminder, if you, as long as you've done 90% of all assignments, all core assignments, I should say, sorry, not all assignments, core assignments, then, you can pass, you can still move forward. Meaning if you've done every single core assignment and you don't want to do authors, well, then you're going to be okay. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do authors in that case. It's a great one. I think that you can continue to learn and, refine your skills. I think it's a great assignment. But if you're like, oh man, dude, I am done. I am mentally done. I just took the exam. It is what it is. Or if you need to focus on the exam and you've done every assignment, then you can go ahead and skip this one. Just as a reminder, next week, next Wednesday is the last day to submit anything. It's assignments or discussion questions for this week. So this week's sort of a short week. That's why I say just go ahead and knock it out now. Because this is a short week, you really only have Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday to submit them. So please make sure that, again, go in and knock out those discussion questions and submit any assignments you need in order to get you over the hill. By the end of the week, by Friday, I will be sending out an email just to let you know where you're at. If you've gotten 90% of the assignments done, kind of basically, hey, here's where you're at. You've already passed the exam / you took a completion. You have done your assignments. You've done your discussion questions. You are set and you're good to go. Or, hey, I need at least 1 or 2 more assignments, or I need, I'm showing that you've got, 70% of assignments. So I'm going to need X amount. I need 5 more assignments or whatever the number is. And so I'll let you know by Friday. So that way you'll at least have the weekend in a couple of days to kind of get those in. And Wednesday is the last day in order to submit that. Tuesday, just as a reminder, is the last day to start an exam. So if you're still waiting, if you're still just trying to study a little bit more, you totally can. So, but just Tuesday is the last day to start, regardless, even though you have 3 attempts. If you wait until Tuesday, then you have up to 3, but you don't have 3 unless, if you wait too late and you can only do 1, then you only have 1. Regarding belt exams, I'm going to work really hard after class tonight to grade as many belt exams as I can. My goal is to have belt exams graded by noon tomorrow, all the ones that I currently have. By noon tomorrow, obviously, if you've done a black belt, I will let you know that, or I'll let you know basically what you got. Hey, you crushed it. You did great. And then if you did a black belt, I'll remind you, please make sure you take down your instance so that way it doesn't cost you any money. But I will try to get that done by noon PST or PDT, I think is what we're technically in now, tomorrow. And yes, I will just kind of go from the first person that submitted and continue to move forward. So I'm a little bit slow. I've been feeling pretty terrible. So I'm a little bit slow behind that and trying to get caught up. Any other questions on sort of housekeeping or anything that you guys need? Any sort of thoughts, questions, concerns, anything that's not clear about what you need in order to move forward starting next week?
Sorry, well, quick question.
Yeah,
For
of
the
course.
exam codes,
Mhm.
how long are they, like how long can you request it and have it be available for like 2, 3 days? I forgot the number of days that you have to
Yeah.
start it within.
Yeah. So I actually just make it until the third Tuesday, honestly. To just be transparent with you. It's unlocked and that code is good until this day right here. So if you got a code, it'll be good up until the last day.
Awesome. And we just send you an email when we want to
Hmm.
request it. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Thank
You
you.
just send me an email and then I can send that over to you. Yeah, of course. Jared asked, what did I buy you from Disney World? I went to Universal and got the Birdie Bots beans. So, Jared, I got one with your name on it. Could be Tutti Frutti, could be vomit. So, we'll have to see which one it really is. I couldn't tell you either. They look the exact same. So, pretty fun. Yeah. So, somebody asked, do you need a new code if you want to take it again? Yeah. If you email me, um, I can get you a new code and you can get that started as a retake. Yeah. Any other questions on the stuff here? Okay. I just want to check in and see kind of how we're doing. I know that it was really poorly timed for me to leave last week, and I'm sorry about that. I planned it months ago and didn't even know when I was teaching or what I was doing. And then it just happened to be the worst week. So I just want to check in and see kind of how are we doing, scale of 1 to 5. How are you doing? And then how are you feeling about the exam? Are you stressed? Is there things that you feel like you need more explanation of, or things that you're just really confused on? So there's a 3. Yeah, if you guys could put in the chat, just kind of explaining where you're at. If you crushed it, you feel it. 2. Okay, so a couple 2s, a couple 3s. For those that are sort of anywhere below a 3 or below, if you guys don't mind, just sort of putting what is causing some confusion. The reason I ask is, as you can tell, this is all sort of bonus material. None of what we are talking about is necessary. I mean, it's a good stuff to know. Like we're going to talk about authentication and authorization because it's something you should know. And then we'll probably talk about OOP and class components just because it might be something that you experience. If you get into a React developer job, they might not do functional components. They might do class components. We can do that. But this sort of front end, like back end, front, we don't need really 4 days for this. So we can shift things around and I can give a lecture on Thursday that kind of talks about, kind of sums up, hey, here are some key things that people are struggling with. I can do that on Thursday and kind of really explain that. And then we can maybe do probably front end all in 1 day and then class components. And then we will do an end of stack career tips and tricks. Scale 1 to 5. Cool. And if you don't feel like putting that in the chat, feel free to email me just the things that you're struggling with, and I can tailor Thursday's message. Obviously, if I don't, or Thursday's class, and if I don't get any emails, then I'll continue with OOP and class components. But if there is really something that you could really use a refresher, email me and let me know, hey, I could really use a refresher on, state, or I see that there's some state, passing some state. Shoot me an email. And then I can incorporate that and we can actually talk about that on Thursday. So that way you have going into this next exam, you have another class that is really sort of hopefully clarifying some stuff. So that way on the weekend, if you wanted to retake, then you totally can. Any questions on that? Any thoughts, concerns, stressors? And maybe I'll try to just tailor Thursdays to be something of, um, you know, I'll try to go through. I see that there's some Slack stuff or some messages in chat about refactoring, about validations, about a couple different things. So maybe I'll just hit some of these pieces. But again, if you guys can email me, that'll assure that whatever you've got or whatever you want to, whatever you need some help on, I can talk about that in class. So we can just kind of do a recap on Thursday. Somebody asked, do you have to wait until Friday? No, you do not. Once I grade your exam, if you have to retake, I'll send you a code immediately and you can just start it whenever you need, whatever's easiest for you. Cool. Any other questions, friends? Going once, going twice. Yeah. Okay. On Thursday, I'll make sure that we'll do a recap of some of the concepts that usually some students struggle with. So we'll make sure I'll just kind of build that in. I'm gonna do this right here. And we'll just do full stack recap. Cool. I don't know if recap needs to have a dash, but alas, it's going to for this. There. Okay. So I wanted to talk about some authorization and authentication. And the point is because whenever we are dealing with our front end and we're dealing especially with React and Node, something really common that you're going to see is that you're going to have some sort of authorization and authentication. Now, if you've taken any other stack, so Python or Java, then you had to sort of deal with this a little bit. You had a login and registration. You had to make sure that your user was in the database. You had to make sure that their emails and their passwords matched, right? So you had some authorization portion of that. And then maybe even if you did a black belt, you did some authentication, basically saying only if the user created this or, then they can edit or then they can delete it. So you might have had something a little bit like that. Now with MERN, we didn't make you guys do that because it's a little bit more of an advanced topic, but it's something that you're going to see very, very frequently when you are dealing with all of this stuff, right? When you're dealing with this authorization and authentication. So I want to make sure that we go over it because it is going to be something that you'll have to do. You'll have to learn. You'll have to know. So before we even kind of jump in, we want to ask authorization and authentication. These are often used kind of in the same way, right? So you might hear like OAuth. You might be like, is that authentication? Is that authorization? So we're going to look at what is the difference. There's going to be some packages that we're going to download. Today's going to be a little bit of a setup, a little bit of an explanation. We'll code out a little bit of stuff. And then we're going to kind of finish it up tomorrow as well. But there's a section, this is the MERN auth, and I'll put this in the chat right here, that talks about authentication and authorization. And so from a very high level, authentication is basically just us saying, is this user who they say that they are? And the way that we'll do this is by validating and saying, okay, this email and this password that they gave me, this does match. We can validate that this is who they say they are in the same way that if you've got an identification card or if you've got some sort of identification, right? Whenever you go, let's say you go to a place to get an adult beverage, hopefully they are asking you for some authorization or authentication, sorry, to say, okay, you say you're 21. Do you have proof, right? And so then they are going to check and they're visually going to do that. They're going to look at your picture. They're going to look at the name and the age, maybe not name, but they're going to look at your picture and your age. And they're going to say, okay, great. I see that this person is above the age of 21 and that their photo matches who I'm looking at, right? So they are authenticating, yes, this person is of age. They can buy an adult beverage, or no, they're not. They're too young, or, this ID is not even the right person, right? That sort of idea. And so whenever we're dealing with our authentication is we're going to be doing the same thing, right? We're going to have our email and our password, and we're going to have them stored, right? And we're going to store them in a hashed version. And so we'll talk about hashing a little bit today using bcrypt. But we're going to have them stored, and we're going to authenticate and say, yep, this is who they say they are. We have their information. We are good to go. Authorization, on the other hand, is what are they allowed to do, right? So again, let's take our example of going to an adult beverage store or club, if you will, and we are authenticated. Yes, they are above age. We can enter the club. But, and I don't go to clubs, so maybe this is an antiquated example. So if it is, I'm so sorry. But I know that there are some clubs that you have like a section that you can go. But if you're VIP, or if you have whatever, you can go into certain sections, but there's a verification process, right? That this person is allowed in the VIP section, or they rented it, or they have a QR code that allows them to go in there, or they're famous, right? Some reason that says, okay, they're authorized to go to this exclusive area, this exclusive portion of our adult beverage site. Same sort of idea in within our application is we want to say, okay, this person's been authenticated. They are authentic. We know that they're allowed in here, right? They've got a user profile, or, they think of your email, they have your email, your password. Yes, this is them. Now, what are they authorized to see? And whenever we're getting into really this enterprise grade technology and information, you're going to have different levels of authorization, right? So a lay employee might just have your base authorization. Maybe that they can view something, but they can't make any edits. They can't make any changes if there's some sort of dashboard, right? And then all the way up to, you're going to have an admin, and the admin maybe is going to be able to give user permission. They're going to be able to authenticate or edit visualizations, or edit something, create a user, delete a user, suspend a user, right? They can do all these things that they're authorized with. And that's based off of when they are created, what is some information that we've given, whether that is there's a role key, and that role key is either like an employee, or it's an admin, or whatever it is, right? And so that's the difference between authentication and authorization. Authentication is this user who they say they are? Have we checked that information? Okay, now that we've checked that, what are they allowed to do within my profile? Are they allowed to delete things? Are they allowed to edit things? Are they allowed to, create new users, et cetera, et cetera? Any questions on authentication, authorization, the difference? Any thoughts on that? Yeah, so Christian's got a great point. It sounds like a lot like user privileges and user roles. Exactly, right? What are they allowed to do? What is their role allowed to do? Can they make edits? Can they change things? Or are they just allowed to view things? So it's just like this guy right here, right? A great example would be, I can go in and I can edit. I can change this, right? You guys cannot. Based off of our role, right? I am authorized to make edits and changes. So is Paul, and so is Gray. But you guys as students are not. So you just have viewing. That's the authorization level that you currently have. Okay. Now, when we are dealing with this, there's a couple different things that we're going to need to do. So we're going to create a new schema, and we're just going to kind of take it from the platform here, where I've already got our models set up, right? And in the sense of, I've just got a models folder. I've got very basic stuff. I've got a npm init-y. I don't really have anything in there, so we're gonna have to go in and add some stuff. We're gonna have to add in, our Express, our Mongoose. We're gonna add in some different things as well. And then we're gonna create a user model. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in here. I'm just gonna say user dot model dot js. Yep, cool. Now, before I do this, I'm going to have to bring in Mongoose. And in order for me to get Mongoose, I want to npm install express Mongoose. And there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff we're going to install, but we'll kind of build it as we go. Perfect. So now, whenever I come here, I can say const Mongoose equals require mongoose. And then now I'm going to create my user schema. So const user schema. Again, I'm creating a new mongoose schema. I'm gonna have a first name. That's gonna be a string, but I want it to be, I want to add in some validations as well. So I'm gonna say type is string. Required first name is required, and we'll just have a minimum length of 2. Okay. Perfect. We'll have a last name. I'm assuming it's just gonna do everything for me. Yep. Perfect. We're gonna have an email. Type string, required, validate. Not yet. Now, if you think about it, what is something that's really common when we have a creation of a user? If we're going to verify something, and this is a great thing to kind of have in place, is sometimes when I go and I log into a website, I'll use an email and I think I need to create a new profile, and I forgot that I've already created a profile for it. And the way I know that I've already created it is hey, this email is already in place. Like we already have something, we already have an account with this. So one thing I can do is I can say unique, UNIQUE, and this is true. Basically saying, hey, this must be unique. I can't have this already in my database. If I've already got this value, if I already have this email, then I want to make sure that, I don't resave it and have another instance of the same email, because then it gets confusing. If I allow it to do that now, whenever I'm comparing my passwords, I don't know which email is which, right? Let's say 2 users use the same email, for example, or I create I create an account with my email and I forget about it, and I create another account with the same email and I use 2 different passwords. Which one do we allow, right? So we want to make sure that it is unique. If we're dealing with emails, it's unique. And yep, we'll do that. And then we're going to be good there. And then now I just need to add in a password. We're going to call this of type string. It's going to be required, yes. And then our min length is going to be 8, and that's fine. Now we could add in some sort of, I don't need any sort of birthday. Timestamp's true. This is great, right? We got a first name, a last name, an email, and a password. This is all we're going to need for what we are doing. Cool. Now, what we can do is a few things. First off, I'm going to call this user schema. Excuse me. Now, if you guys are creating a password, oftentimes we have to use a confirm password, right? Where we have to type in our password and we have to type it in again. There's a lot of stuff for that. Really, the main reason is because if you fat finger something, if you're typing it and you accidentally, hit the wrong key and you're only having one and you create a profile with that, then, and then you go and you try to update it. It doesn't create for a very good user experience. So you want to make sure that, okay, they are matching, right? They both match. That is working perfectly. But, yeah, so we want to make sure that that happens, or else they're going to have to go in, reset their password. They might leave your site. They might not use it again. So we want to make sure that we're good to go. But on the other hand, we don't want to create an attribute called confirm password, right? Because what we would then be doing is just doubling up the same password. These should match, right? They should be the exact same. And so if we were to do confirm password, we're just kind of adding more usage for something that is not necessary. So what we can do is we can use some middleware. So I'm going to say middleware to check to make sure the password matches confirm password. You might wonder, where's confirm password? Well, we're going to assume that when we're creating our form, we have something that's called confirm password. And what we can actually do is within our middleware, we can say a user.schema and then say virtual. Now, what this is doing is this is saying for this instance, I want to create a virtual attribute called confirm password that it's not going to save in the database, but it's going to use it whenever it is verifying. It's got this middleware. It's going to say, okay, do these match? Great, but I don't need to actually save that information. This in itself, this virtual is a promise. So we've got a, it's got an additional portions where we've got a get, and we're saying, cool, I have this, I want this underscore confirm password, and then this value, which is this confirm password, and we'll talk about here in just a second. This is getting this confirm password virtual field. And then we are setting it to the value that's going to be coming from, excuse me, from our form. So this is creating the virtual field. And then we are setting that virtual field's value in the same way that we do with state, right? We say like a set password or whatever. It's setting that value to whatever value is being passed through. So this is all this is doing is creating this virtual attribute. Now what we can do is we can then validate it by running this guy right here. Yeah. Now there's a lot going on here. So let's kind of break it down and see what's going on. This is all middleware that comes through, and then it allows us to, and this is all built in, right? Built into Mongoose. So let me write this. Middleware to validate. This is not to create virtual field confirm password. Perfect. I want to have these notes that way. If you guys are looking at it, then it actually explains it. So this is creating our virtual field. This is saying, okay, great. What I want to do is before you run this and you save it, right? I have to do something. I want you to validate. And then it takes in a function, and this function is next. And this just allows after this is what you do, right? Move forward. And it just is necessary for the middleware. Here's what we're going to say is, hey, if this password does not, and this just refers to the instance that we're talking about. So as I'm creating a user and I go and I fill out all the information, right? And I go and I send it to my backend. When I'm saying this is a keyword in JavaScript that just refers to specifically that instance, right? In the same way that whenever we use map and we map through and we maybe say, user comma index, and every time for each instance of user, that user just refers to that specific user that it's talking about. This is the same sort of way, right? It's just this specific instance is password. If it does not match my confirm password, then I want to invalidate it. Say, nope, there's an error. We cannot move forward. And I'm going to invalidate confirm password, this virtual field. So it does not save that information. And then this is the error that we pass through. Password must match confirm password. And then in order for it to move forward, we have our next. And this next is just built in our middleware, allows us to then say, okay, yep, things are good to go. We can move forward. Or this has been done. This is done running. We can move forward. Okay. So that is just us creating a virtual field. Again, we don't want to save confirm password, so we can create a virtual field for it. And then all we're doing here, though it looks complicated, all we're doing here is saying, hey, do these match? And if they don't, then we say, no, this is invalid. We can't do this. Okay. Now, there's a couple ways to do validations from an email. There is, I think it's called NPM validator. Is that what it is? I think it's just called, maybe it's just called validator. Yeah. Yeah. So what we can do is you can create, this is what we call like regex. And so this is a regular expression. And so that's a normal, a common thing, right? You might have used regex if you took Python, but it's just a way to say, hey, does whatever's submitted match this pattern? And this pattern might be, all letters and numbers, everything's good to go, plus an @ sign, plus a whole, same sort of thing, anything goes, plus maybe a .com or a dot. There's a whole bunch of things, and regex not a thing that you have to be able to build from scratch. There's regex generators now with Chat GPT. You can just say create a regex for an email right? So you can do this way. This is fine because and you might have seen it, but our email also has a key that we can do called validate, right? Or we can pass in and say, hey, great, I want to pass in and use this validator, which you can either put it here or you could not have validator and just say val, comma, and then please enter valid email, which we're going to see here in a second. So we can have it like this, or we can use another tool. So I'm going to say npm install validator. Great. And so this is a package, this is an npm package that allows me just to basically do this on my own, right? So I have to bring it in. Now that we have this package JSON, we check its validator. That's good to go, 13.9. So it's just npm install validator. But if I want to use it, then I need to come up here. And whenever we're installing packages, especially if we're just going to use like a function, and so that's what we're going to be using is just a specific method of this package, is I can say const and then say is email. I think it's email, yeah. Híjole. Sorry, guys. It's email equals require validator. And so what I'm doing is saying, hey, I've got this validator package, but instead of bringing in everything and then having to say validator dot is email, I can just bring in is email from our validator package. And then now within my email, all I have to do is say, cool, I want to validate it. I want to, I can do it this way, or I can literally just put is email, comma, please, oops. Please enter a valid email. I guess I'm gonna do it like this. I don't even need the brackets. I don't know why GitHub Copilot was making me do that. All that other junk. I used to do like this. So what's happening is whenever let's say that these do match, right? This confirm password and this password do match. It's also going to do is it's going to run this validator. So it's going to validate and run this function called is email. And let's look that up. Let's see, is email validator. I got notes in here. Is email. Yep. So checks if the string is an email. And so it's just a validator to basically say, hey, is this an email? It's regex sort of built in. You don't have to write it yourself. You could write it, and that's on the platform as well. If you wanted to write it this way, you totally can, because then you're testing if the value being passed in matches this. Okay. Or as I always like to show you a different way, so that way you know both, you could just bring in the package of is email and then just run that here. And then if there is an error, then we have this customer message that says, please enter a valid email. Cool. We're almost done with our model setup. Last thing we need to do is we're able to we've already talked about Mongoose virtuals, which all of this is in here in the platform. So if you guys are like, what is going on? It's in here. You can link as well. The last thing we need to do is we need to install bcrypt. Now, the way you do it is just npm I bcrypt. So npm install bcrypt. Great. We go and we check our package JSON. Perfect. And we have bcrypt here. Now, what this does is it allows us to hash and salt our passwords. So just so you know, if you guys have never, some of you guys have taken Python or Java or both, and so you're familiar with bcrypt, but if this is your only stack that you've taken, you might not be familiar with that. Now, in cryptography and in cybersecurity, one thing that is a given, a must, a sort of duh thing is that you have to hash your passwords. You might say, what is hashing a password? What hashing a password is if we, let's say that we've got just this, let's say that this is my password, is password. You never, ever, ever want to save the password in what we call plain text. This would be plain text, meaning that if I were to look up my password, or if I were to look in the database at what is the value here, then I could actually see, the word password. You never want to do that because databases get broken into, right? And what is unfortunate is a lot of people use the same password for everything. And so if you're one of those people, I'd really encourage you to get a password manager. I use NordPass, but there's lots of other ones. I think like 1Password's another one. LastPass is another one. But what a password manager will do is allow you to get and generate kind of crazy passwords. And then it does it for you. And then you can kind of just like mine will autofill it for me. So I don't have to do anything. But what it does is it allows you to have a more challenging password to break into. That's important because if we have the same password for everything, and let's say that we put that password into a website or we create a profile on a website and that website gets hacked, right? And now your information is out there, right? Your email and your password is out there. And if you use it for your same banking information, if you use it for a loan information, if you use it for whatever, right? If it gets in the wrong hands, then you can actually be in a world of trouble. I was listening to a really interesting podcast. If you guys like podcasts, if you're the podcast type and you like the crime podcast, there's one, I can't remember quite what it's called. Let me look it up real fast. I know that so I've got a little bit of taking cold medicine brain. It's called Darknet Diaries. And so with Darknet Diaries, we'll talk about like there was a hack at LinkedIn. And so because of that, they were able to get passwords. And then that one hack at LinkedIn led to the hack of multiple companies because people use the same things over and over. So there's a huge market for passwords and emails, a huge black market for that. It's really, really large. That's why people are always getting hacked into states. And when I mean states, I mean like other governments, including our US government. People like try to get an advantage of that information. So what we can do to kind of protect ourselves, not store them in plain text. Now, what a hash will do is it will actually jumble, and not jumble in the sense that it'll just like move the letters around, but it'll create an algorithm and kind of like a cipher, if you will, that maybe password looks something like this, right? Based off of the hashing algorithm that you use. And so the algorithm itself will be stored, or the password will be stored like this. But when you run it through and dehash it, or the algorithm does, it'll end up being password. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but it's a way that if our emails and things do get stolen, right? At least they might have our emails, which is kind of, we give that out for free, right? Like that's a normal thing. But you don't have the password because this is what they have, even though it's meant to be this, right? Even though this equates to password, you would never look at it and be like, oh, that's password, unless we're obviously doing it here. And it's very easy to hack passwords. Now, there are two password hashing algorithms that are probably the most standard. One of them is bcrypt, which is what we're using, and the other one's SHA-256. Now, there's quite a few different hashing algorithms out there, and there's some that are antiquated that we don't ever want to use. One of them is an MD5. Why do you not want to use that? Well, hackers are smart, right? And there are some computers that are much more powerful. And so what they do is they call it brute forcing. And so they will basically take this password. If you've ever gotten to a point where you're on a website and you're trying to like log in, and if it's a bank or if it's, something kind of higher end that maybe can cost money, it might say like, hey, you have 5 left because you want to make sure that, the 5 left or you're locked out of your account. It's because what users or hackers will do is they do something called brute forcing, where they will basically just try they have lists of words and they will try every single thing, every combination, everything you can until they break your, even if you're using like MD5 and it's hashed, until eventually they say, oh, this equals password. If they're using MD5, we know that this equals password. So they create this thing called a rainbow table. This is all over the dark web, in the black market. Is rainbow tables are out there. So what you can do is, if you get a data leak and there is a username, i.e. your email, and some passwords that are hashed, they will then say, does this hash match anything in our rainbow table? And if it does, well, then they've already cracked it. They don't need to kind of do anything, and they have your information. They can go into your account. They can do whatever they need, right? And so MD5 is one that's really, that's a really common one that has already been hacked. There's tons of stuff out there. Bcrypt and SHA-256 are ones that have not, that are notoriously slow. And that is a big thing when it comes to cybersecurity, is you want it to be slow. Not slow in the sense that it takes a long time for you to like save a user, but in order for them to crack it, it takes a really long time to where, you can, as you add characters, and that's why if you're ever doing like a password strength, the more characters you add, the stronger it is, because it will increase the time it takes to where it's not even worth them trying to crack or brute force that algorithm or brute force that password, because it would literally take like 20 years for that one. And so Bcrypt is really popular because it takes so long that it's not even worth the computational power that we have now. It's not worth the time. Now, when quantum computing comes out, we're all done. Like the AI overlords take over because it'll happen like that. It's not a big deal. And passwords are not a thing, which in actuality, I don't know if you've noticed, but passwords are trying to phase them out. Apple, Microsoft, and Google have all come together to try to phase them out in the next 10 years. So in the next 10 years, we won't even have passwords. Everything is going to biometrics, or passkeys. I don't know if you just saw that. I think Microsoft just announced passkeys, or maybe it was Google. And then with Apple, it's all of your Face ID. Everything's biometrics, because it's really easy to hack a password or figure out a password based off of social engineering. Even so, if somebody knows me or knows more about me, like Gray was talking about in office hour, they can look up and say, okay, this person loves dogs. Their dog name is Charlie and Marley. So maybe like Char Mar. Let's try that. Right. So people will do this, especially if you have power, if you have, some kind of advanced access to something, they can do that. Right. So that's where biometrics are coming out. And that's really where in the next probably 5 years, there won't be passwords, won't be a thing. That's what Microsoft, Google, and Apple all announced last year. Then in the next 10 years, they're going to phase out passwords. So that's fun. But for right now, we need to make sure that we are hashing our stuff. So even if our stuff does get broken into, or our users are safe, right? Because T-Mobile just announced another break, right? Another data leak, another hack. And then that sort of starts to create a little bit of worry. Is my information going to be taken? Do I have to, if all of my identification gets stolen and, my social security gets stolen and my identity gets stolen, is T-Mobile on the hook for that? Do they get sued? There's a whole bunch of stuff. So we want to make sure our stuff is really down packed. Therefore, we hash. Now, again, we use bcrypt for this, and it's just an algorithm that'll do it. And then what it will do is not only will it hash, but then we can add, and this is sort of an additional thing. So if we, let's say that this is password, we can add something we call salt. And what salt is just basically it'll add random characters. So this might be password, but then it'll also add in this as well. And it's pretty long, but something like this. So maybe this portion is password, but our salt can be a random number. And so they don't know, did we use 1? Did we use 5? Did we use 10? Right? Additional characters, and it's not always just in the same, it can look like this, where this portion is the password, but then it's right here. And so again, you can see how maybe an algorithm or brute forcing doesn't know where to look, where to go. There's a whole bunch of different things it can do. So we can add salt to make it even more secure, which we will do, right? That's exactly what we'll do there. And so by using bcrypt, we are allowing ourselves to hash our password, and then we will then use bcrypt anytime we're logging in to make sure, and we will never know what our, if you're ever using a website and you're like, hey, what's my password? And they're like, oh, here's your password in plain text. You should never use that website again. Nobody should ever know your password, because you should only have the algorithm that does the verification step for you. Cool. All right. That was a long rant. I hope that makes sense. I just thought it's really important to sort of know what hashing is. It's important to know what salt is, randomization, why it's important, and where we're going as a tech company. Any questions on that?
Get rid of your robot, y'all, before it's too late. That's
Yeah, they have, well, they already have all your information, Gray. Just at least let them clean for you,
uprising. Uprising.
Oh, it's already done, dude. So Alex asked a great question. Does two-factor authentication stop them from accessing it? Yes, that's exactly the point of two-factor authentication, is they might actually get your password, but then they would have to hack into your authenticator and have your specific code that is only valid for, let's say, 30 seconds. And then that's where Google and Microsoft, you should only really kind of use those as your authenticators, unless your company has like a, at Twilio, we use another one. Okta is another one that's really popular for like cybersecurity. Yeah, that's the whole point. That's a great point, Alex. It's a whole point of a two-factor authentication is to, even if they guess your password, they can't get into your account. It's just another step into it. Isaiah, yeah, I would definitely sign up for a chip in my arm, dude. Heck yeah. My brain, I'm less advanced, I'm less inclined, but in my arm to tell me everything. I mean, if you think about it, people are already doing that. I don't know if you've seen, it's kind of like, I love fitness and I love the new crazes in fitness, and tons of people are plugging in this thing to see their glucose levels. And to think that, like, if you think that data is not being used for something, then you're being crazy. So they're already collecting your biometric data. And I was talking to somebody the other day that works at Lockheed Martin, and they let me know, like, yeah, no, it's inevitable. They're already working on 6G. The stuff that they can do at Lockheed Martin. If you don't know, Lockheed Martin is one of the biggest like defense suppliers for the US for like weapons and F-35s and stuff. The things that they can do are incredible. And they said it's not an if, but when biometric and computational things kind of come into place, whether that's something in your arm. Neuralink, I don't know if you guys have heard of Neuralink. Now we're just getting on conspiracy, so I'll finish up there. But Neuralink's actually an Elon Musk company that is implanting a chip into your brain. And the idea is that, it can help with neuroactivity, but eventually you'll be able to like start your car with it is the goal, which is insane. So anyways, okay. Just hashing a password and adding in salt. So how do we do that, right? So we just talked about it. We need to install bcrypt, which we've done. Right? Bcrypt is there. We're good to go. So as always, we need to bring it in. So I'm going to say const bcrypt equals required bcrypt. Perfect. And then now what I can do is, before I save this, I'm going to add in our middleware to actually hash our password. So I'm going to say, okay, pre-save. I want to hash this password. I think there's one more thing I'm gonna do. Yep. So I'm gonna have a function that is going to use bcrypt.hash. So this is actually doing my hashing for me. What am I hashing? I'm hashing the password that my user is submitting. So it could just be password. It could be its own random string. And then I'm adding 10 rounds of salt. So that's that additional information. So then if everything is good to go, I have my hash, right? So I run the hash. And then what it returns to me is my newly hashed password. And then now I say, now this password equals hash. And so when it actually saves it, and we'll see this tomorrow when we actually create a user and then show it in MongoDB. When it saves it, it will save it as our hash password. Now, when we handle our login functionality, we're going to compare the two, right? To basically say, okay, is this working? Are we good to go? Can we see this information? Or compare the two, but we're going to have bcrypt do that. We're not going to do that, right? Bcrypt themselves are going to go in and compare because we don't know how it works. We don't need to. That's part of the safety factor. But for right now, what we're doing is we are saying, okay, before you, so pre, right? Excuse me. Before you do that, I want to hash my password. Once that hash, if everything's good to go and I add my salt, then I'm going to change my password value to that hash. And so now what's being saved as that, what's being saved as my password is our actual new hash. Okay. That's all I've got. That's all we need to get to for right now. Are there any questions on what we're doing? Also, hope I didn't stress you out about the future of the world and all the technological advances that we're making at a rapid pace that's going to eventually doom us.
Understatement.
Are there any questions? Anything that's not making sense, friends? And again, all this stuff is on the platform. I just tried to give a little bit more information, but if you're, curious about Mongoose virtuals, so right here talks about all the different information, all the different things that you can do.
I don't have a question about that material specifically, but just where we're talking about passwords. I was wondering, do you think that's going to be a thing with the facial ID? Like,
Yeah.
just from a outside perspective, it feels like that would be something more duplicatable if I could just take a picture of your face and crack the code of how to tell the computer that this is the person opening whatever.
Yeah, so that is the future of what they're doing. I don't know. I think it's a little bit more than that. I think that because they do the depth of, I don't know exactly the data points that they take in, but there's a lot, right? I don't know if you guys have been, if you guys are on social media. I'm not super on social media, but there was a big thing. I love like tech and social media, and there's a big thing that was coming out. And it was like, why is Apple taking a photo of you every 5 seconds? And so it became this like really large thing. That's like, why is Apple's just trying to do this, blah, 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 blah. Well, what people don't realize is Apple just created a, on one of their newer updates. They basically have, it's called attention. And so before it goes dark, it checks to see, are you looking at your phone and you're just really still? And so if you are looking at your phone, we're not going to dim your phone. It's going to stay on. And if you're not looking at your phone, then we'll dim it and save the battery, right? So this always on. And so it is, pinging every 5 seconds. It's pinging and saying, what is your current facial structure and where are you looking? And so I think there's quite a few data points that they are doing. I know that's like depth of the face. And I don't know if it's an iris. I don't know. Obviously I don't work at Apple. I don't know the security, But they did announce that, yes, they are going, all three of them partnered together to say, yeah, no, passwords are going away. That is not going to be something that we are doing, and it is all going to be biometrics and passkeys. Good question, though. So this is from Apple's newsroom. Apple, Google, and Microsoft can commit to expanded support of FIDO standard to accelerate availability of passwordless logins. And I'll put this in the chat. This was just about a year ago. Oh, I was right on. And I mean, right now, I couldn't do that, right? Like I couldn't go to my wife. I couldn't take a picture of my wife and then show Apple, and then it all of a sudden be able to open her phone. So I'm confident that there's a little bit more
Yeah, no, I'm
technology
sure
in there.
I'm confident that if that's what they're doing, then it is secure. But also, like with AI, like it feels
Yeah.
like that might be something where it could generate, like just based on a photo, generate
Mhm.
that depth and the data points, maybe not perfectly, but enough to be like to try to brute force it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's always going to be right.
Mhm.
There's money, and so where there's money, there's people that'll figure out a way, and then they'll
Yep.
just keep working for it. But yeah, and this is a statement from Apple themselves about a year ago that they are moving forward for a passwordless future. And I mean, the three biggest companies in tech are the ones coming together to do that, which is insane. So, but for right now, we still have that. So, any other questions, friends? Okay. Well, tomorrow what we'll do is we'll continue with this and finish our back end. We're gonna have some logic in our controller that we have whenever we're dealing with our actual creation of a user and our whenever we're logging in and we're checking. So we'll handle that tomorrow. And again, Thursday, I will do a recap just on some things. So if there is anything you need to see or would like to see or are struggling with, make sure you email me by tomorrow so that way I can add it in on Thursday. And then I will work on grading some exams and grading the exams, trying to get them all graded, all the ones that are submitted, all graded by noon tomorrow. So that way you guys have ample time. So, oh, I miss you guys too. I'm really glad to be back. Sorry, I don't feel very good. So if I was a little bit off, I'm on quite a bit of cold medicine, but trying to make it. And I hope that this class was at least entertaining and you learned something new. So other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful night. Good luck, and I will see you tomorrow.